traders, this is Blake Morrow, and you are listening to the week ahead video for May 14th, 2017. And I want to welcome you to this week's video. Before we get started, a couple quick things. Make sure if you haven't tried out ForexAnalytix, it is just $1 for 10 days. Try it out. Make sure you also download the mobile application. I think a lot of traders, when they first sign up, they forget that we actually have a mobile app. Get it in the App Store or Google Play. And so make sure you try it out so you can see all this analysis firsthand, get push notifications when you're on the road, all that great stuff. Okay, now that I've said that, what I wanted to really talk about today is obviously the markets. This market is actually in a pivotal area right now. And I say that because something interesting has happened, most importantly at the end of the week, this week, in the bond market. Now, a lot of traders wonder, well, what does the bond market have to do with the currency market? Well, as bonds sell off, yields tend to rally. And if yields are rallying, that tends to affect the dollar. Yields rally, the dollar tends to rally as, bond prices come down. People expect yields to be moving up. So that'll happen in the markets. But what's happening right now is you are seeing a little bit of a rally in the bond market. And so as the bond market is showing some signs of strength, that means that when bonds go up, yields come down. And when yields come down, the dollar overall tends to be a little softer. That means it tends to go down a little bit. So we have a descending wedge in the 10-year bond market. And that means that descending wedge is actually breaking higher. That's a reversal pattern, which is telling us that, hey, if this bond market's getting stronger, the dollar may come under a little bit of pressure. Now, why is that significant to us in the currency market? Well, if you look at the dollar index, let's go over to the dollar index here. I just missed it. There it is. If you look at the dollar index had a really big pivot off of, you can see this triangle formation. We had a big pivot off the underside of the triangle. So we rallied, looked like we're going to push to new highs in the dollar index. When I say new highs maybe over the course of a few weeks. We actually reversed from there and we're coming down. So that dollar index looks like we could see back down here towards the what we've got marked as the C wave as a possible new trend low. It is entirely possible, especially if the bond market continues to rally. Now, the bond market usually rallies if we have, obviously if yields are coming down, but that's could be a product of equities coming under pressure. Now, the equity markets have been very strong, and they haven't. We're right up near the all-time highs, but one of the things about the equity markets, if you haven't noticed, is we have made a recent high, and when we were at 2400, we kind of might have made a false breakout. We might actually post a little bit of a double top here, and if you can see the support right around 2380, roughly around 2380, and you can see that support zone right there, that's going to be important support for the stock market. If that breaks, we might see further bond market strength, and we could see dollar weakness as a result, and it might come through the dollar yen, which tends to be the most affected currency pair as far as dollar pairs, with a strengthening of or a weakening of yields rather, and a strengthening of the bond market. So if you look at the dollar index, and this is just, or excuse me, the dollar yen, if you look at the daily chart, the dollar yen just snapped a nice uptrend line that we've had for the last couple of weeks. And even though we're outside of channel resistance, it does look like the dollar yen could pull back to maybe as low as 112, which 112 is a 38% retracement of this entire move. So the one thing I wanted to point out for this next week, especially, there isn't a whole lot of data this week in the US. All right, we have, like, some of the important numbers is like on Tuesday we have building permits. On Wednesday we have crude oil inventories, but that might move more of the dollar Canadian, which is also up against some pretty key resistance. Well, we have weekly unemployment claims, and so there's not a whole lot of data coming out in the U.S. So we might get more of an organic move and in the dollar, and that organic move might be played out through the bond market and through equities. So that's why I think instead of focusing, okay, well, what's the event risk that's going to move the dollar? Let's pay attention to the bond market and how that affects the yen and maybe some of these other yen pairs and the dollar index in general. There are a few other things that are happening this week that are important. We have like the Australian employment report on Wednesday. On Tuesday, we have New Zealand CPI. And if you haven't been watching the Aussie New Zealand looks like it's actually, making a turn higher and starting to look pretty strong. This week could confirm with those pieces of data. And at the end of the week, we have Canadian CPI, which is rather important, especially if you look at the dollar Canadian. One last thing I'll just take you to. The dollar Canadian is knocking its head right up against resistance here. See how bullish we have this like bull flag pattern that's set up. We hit 127% extension of this, the peak that was set in 2017 to the low. We're at the 127% extension, and we're just holding up here, in this high and low that's consolidated right against the top, where we could actually break out higher towards 140. Or if the dollar sees some weakness or the Canadian currency sees some strength, we could see a move back to the breakout point, which is just below 136. So the dollar, I think, is the dollar Canadian is kind of pivotal here. So to wrap things up, let's focus on this week. Let's focus on the bond market, and let's pay really close attention to what's happening in the bond market. Early on in the week, see how it affects the dollar index, and watch closely to the yen pairs and the S&P. I think those are the things to watch this week. Guys and gals, thank you very much for listening. And a couple other things really fast before I go. Thank you for all of your entries to the ForexAnalytix giveaway. We had so many entrants. We actually, the whole team is going through and scouring through all of the people who had entered and all their pictures and commenting on them. We had some great ones, and we can't wait to announce the winners this week. Also, happy Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day here in the U.S. If you're a mom and you're listening to this to this video, happy Mother's Day to you. And if you haven't wished your mother or loved one that you know as a mom happy Mother's Day, make sure you do so and tell them how important they are to you and your family. All right, have a great day, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening in. This is Blake Morrow with ForexAnalytix.